Pizza delivery drivers, what was the most awkward request you've had a customer ask for? I used to work for Pizza Hut, and the most memorable request was on an internet order that said, "Send your highest achiever." Me being the only driver since it was during the day, I took the order not knowing what it meant. When they answered the door, the dude asked, "Are you a high achiever?" I was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Do you achieve highs?" Then it clicked, why do you ask? He says, "Here's the cash for the pizza. From now on, when we order, you don't even have to knock. Just walk in, set the pizza on the coffee table, take your cash and hit the pipe until it's cashed." They quickly became my favorite customers. They had some amazing weed. It got to the point where my manager would see me walk in and look at my eyes and be like, "It was that house again, wasn't it?" Or I miss delivering pizzas. Story 2. Had someone order the extravaganza, basically every topping ever, from Domino's, with triple toppings. I told him it wouldn't cook. Manager told him it wouldn't cook. He said it was fine. We put it through the oven 2 times. Crust was basically burned. Dropped it off, came back and got a call. Apparently, it didn't cook and he wanted a refund. Manager just had him banned from all Domino's locations in our area instead. Edit. More stories. Had a drunk lady try and put the change in my pocket herself, in front of her family. Went to a house that had a prank call for 3 extra large pizzas. 3 other drivers from other restaurants showed up. Owner was confused as they hadn't ordered food. Took them back to the store. Took a call from a lady throwing a kid's birthday party at a nearby swimming pool and sold her the 3 pizzas at a hefty discount. Took 3 calls from a guy looking for a girl who had clearly given him our number instead of hers the night before. Gave him a discount heartbreaker deal I came up with on the spot. Got into a competition with one of my managers to who could answer the phone with the most ridiculous name and not have the customer notice. I used Pocahontas, but I lost to Rainbow Butt Sprinkles. Had my colleagues steal my rental car. Since mine was being repaired due to a part of a building falling on it, I wasn't in it. And go off-roading, getting a Hyundai Accent stuck in the mud, and then 2 pickups trying to pull it out also got stuck. Had the entire exhaust system from the head pipe to the muffler fall off my beater car. Took multiple school lunch deliveries to elementary schools. Sometimes in other towns that don't have a pizza place, would haul a couple hundred personal pizzas in. Never got tipped once. And the volunteers would just stare at me like I should have moved it all from my car into the gym in one trip and serve it for them. Was getting gas, and had a truck at the station back onto the hood of my car, just after I got it back from the previous building-related repairs. Once had my car spin 180 on the freeway on a day that it snowed. Luckily, traffic was only going about 10 km/h. Story 3. I once had a request for a Kexy shirtless hunk to deliver the pizza. I couldn't be further from hunk condition, picture your typical neckbeard, but thought it'd be funny to take my shirt off when I arrived as a goof. It was a teenage girl's birthday party and was super awkward. I felt like a huge creep, but a hand job later I was out of there. Story 4. One of our semi-regulars called to place an order of eggplant parmesan right before closing. My boss, being stoned and bored, decided to make this meal look ducking fabulous while I was cleaning in the back. Took the delivery to the dude and came back. No big deal, except I see my boss on the phone, crying. Apparently, the dude had ordered this as his possible last meal before going in for bone marrow transplant surgery the next morning. He had called to thank us for receiving a meal that looked just like the way his grandmother used to make it. Edit. Sorry folks, fell asleep right after originally posting. The guy did make it. He called us back 2 weeks later and ordered the same thing, and we gave it to him on the house. He tipped the dude who delivered with the 20 he was going to pay for it as well. Story 5. I'm so glad I can post this. Has to be the weirdest delivery in the world. So before I even get the delivery, my manager tells me something is weird about it, because the guy wanted to call me, the driver, before I delivered it. He told him no. So I was told to call the guy when I got to the house. I arrive at the house and call the number, and he tells me to come to the door and ring the bell. Okay, fine. An elderly woman answers the door and he tells me to hand the phone to her, so I do. She starts yelling and screaming at the guy on the phone, telling him she has a restraining order and she changed her phone number and everything. She's really upset and crying. She hangs up and tells me how he lives in another state and he's insane. I guess this was the only way he could think of getting to talk to her. Weirdest Schmidt I have seen. Yeah, I never got a tip on that delivery. Story 6. I'm going to lurk this thread, waiting for that one pizza guy's post about when I ordered pizza last week, Edette. Okay, you guys coaxed it out of me. Here, well, the request was just silliness. Not that Domino's is pizza by any means, but I wrote, "Don't judge me," as a special request. I had no reason to write it, but I did. I'm silly and immature. Big deal. Want to fight about it. Anyway, me and my girlfriend had just finished having a particularly rough, intimate session. What else do you do while waiting for cheap delivery? Quickies. A few minutes after the glorious release, my girlfriend put on a shirt that goes well past her knees, as to not reveal herself to our imminent delivery. The mistake here was having nothing underneath. He knocked, I answered, and while I was signing the receipt, he asks, "Hey, what was with that request?" While handing the pizza box to my girlfriend, she takes a step forward to grab the box, and then it happens. The genetic gift I so generously gave her a few minutes earlier makes its escape. The splash sound as it hit the floor was loud enough to make us all look. I didn't answer his question. He handed us the other box with the Cinesticks, and I shut the door. Don't judge me. Story 7. Got a familiar address and delivered to the father of an old friend I had from a LAN center my dad ran growing up. His dad was a really cool guy back in the day, and still is. But back then he was cool in the "I've always got Capri Sun and goldfish on deck" kind of way. Nowadays he's cool in the "I'm having an orgy and buying everyone I'm currently banging pizza" kind of way. Anyways, the strangest request I ever received was to not tell his son about anything I saw that day. He also tipped fat. Story 8. Not me. A friend told me this classic delivery. Delivers 3 pizzas to a lady. She answers the door and asks if he can do her a favor for a few extra bucks. He's hesitant at first. Older lady and not a cougar. He says yes. She asks him to change a light bulb she can't reach. Oh, no problem. Happy to help this lady who probably lives alone. She leads him into the dining room, down on living room, and there are 5 to 6 people in there, all watching TV, most of them fully grown adults, a couple teenagers. All of them more than capable of changing the light from the ceiling fan in the middle of the room. No one says anything or looks at my friend. She hands him the light bulb and he changes one of the bulbs. All the while, this group of people continues to not acknowledge any of this is happening. It's not a raunchy story, but it is pretty funny to think about. Also, it's true. Unlike 95% of what's going to be posted here. Story 9. I deliver organic produce in Ohio. Our clientele is mostly upper-class people because organic food, plus delivery fees, is quite pricey. Anyway, on my pick sheet, I have an area under each client where they can put special delivery instructions. For example, they may want their box placed out of street view or on their back porch. One day, I'm making my way through Route, listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, when I look down at my next customer's information to see the following special instructions. Please do not make your presence known during delivery. I took this to mean I should be quiet when approaching the house and setting the box down. No big deal. Turns out what she meant is that I should park down the road and walk to her house so that her neighbors don't know she receives deliveries from the help. I was pretty embarrassed. For her, not me. But I played it cool and tried to leave. We drivers have communication software we can use en route, and I let them know to make a note of this customer. Turns out, 2 weeks later, the same thing happened to another driver, but she called the cops. And the driver later told me she told him it was due to his race. Crazy world we live in. Edit. A word. Edit 2. To address some questions. Apparently, this woman simply did not like the way delivery vehicles driven by non-filthy rich people looked in front of her home. Story 10. Alright, so I had this delivery once to a hospital. Some guy bought a bunch of pizzas for his family, who I'm guessing were visiting a patient. He orders like 8 larges, comes out to exactly $100. I pull up and it's like 4 Mexican men, one very hefty, and waving around a $100 bill as I drive into the loading area of the hospital. Before I can open my trunk to get the pizzas, they start crowding around me like vultures. This isn't the weird part. I say to the fat man, "Do you want me to unload all these pizzas to these guys?" He stammers for a bit and says, "No, take them to the cafeteria." His minions scatter like roaches. At this point, I assume he will just meet me at the cafeteria, but he hands me the $100 and says, "I'll show you how to get there," and goes to my passenger door, opens it, and gets inside. I should have locked my door. In hindsight, I always do now. Me being a non-confrontational dude, I just say, maybe he will tip me well for going through hoops for him. Well, as we go around the building, I notice him shift his weight in his seat, and then he just rips a huge, juicy fart. The fat man didn't even have the decency to shoot it away from me. He just launched it in my general direction without thinking. I remember slowing down and turning to him in shock. He just kept his eyes forward the whole time, acting like he didn't just rip ass in a stranger's car. Thank God I had my windows open that day. He ends up making me haul all 8 pizzas by myself into this crowded cafeteria. When I'm finished unloading, I know deep down he isn't going to tip, but I stand there looking at him as he's looking down away from me. I grew a little mini-pear in that moment and politely asked, "Do you maybe have $1 or $2 you could give to me for helping you out?" He just sits there not making eye contact with me, shakes his head and says, "Nah." I remember a security guard was sitting right there, and I look at him and he has this shocked look on his face as well. I just shrug and leave. Schmitters will be schmitters. Story 11. Years ago, I delivered for a place that tried to bill themselves as gourmet pizza. Since they were so classy, the drivers' uniforms were a tuxedo shirt and bow tie. I had the misfortune of delivering to 2 separate bachelorette parties in my time at this company. And on both occasions, the middle-aged ladies refused to believe I was not the stripper. When I actually handed them the pizzas, they still tried to pay me to take my clothes off. I know it sounds like it would be awesome, but it was beyond awkward. Mortifying. I could not get out of there fast enough. Story 12. I was at a concert at Gillette Stadium, and we took a party bus there. Got way too drunk at the concert, and we went back out to the party bus a little early while some people stayed inside the concert. We weren't thinking completely straight and ordered Domino's. We told them our address was Party Bus at Patriot Place parking lot. They actually came and dropped off 4 pizzas. They made a loyal Domino's customer that night. Story 13. I delivered pizzas for a semester in college. Couple stories come to mind. There was a Tool concert at our local arena, and the security guards, equipment guys for Tool ordered the pizzas during their show. I got to go backstage at the arena. That was pretty sick because I am a huge hard rock fan and Tool fan. This almost got me fired. This family, very fat, overweight family, had a huge $50+ order. All sorts of different pizzas, cheesy bread, soda, ect. Well, apparently, we got the order wrong slightly and delivered a few of the wrong type of pizzas. The lady, very overweight, middle-aged lady, is chewing me out, yelling at me as we are looking at the receipt together, checking the pizzas. Ect. Mind you, it wasn't my fault. Order was slightly wrong. I'm just the driver. So anyway, she is screaming at me, very pissed off. So we figure it all out. I call the pizza place, Papa John's. Tell them to make a couple new pizzas. I was going to drive back there, wait for the pizzas, then drive the correct pizzas back to this lady's house. I'm kind of pissed because I am wasting all this time to do all this. I know she won't tip me, and I could be spending my time driving other orders and making tips instead of dealing with this screw-up. So anyway, drive back, wait, get the correct pizzas, then drive back to her house. I deliver the pizzas, and she keeps chewing me out. Finally, she says to me, "I am not giving you back any of the wrong pizzas you gave me. Don't you know I am diabetic?" I then snap back at her. "Well, if you are diabetic, maybe you shouldn't be eating pizzas and cheesy bread." I then stormed off. She called my boss to complain about me. When my boss asked me what happened, I told her the lady is crazy and I wouldn't ever say something like that. He let it slide. It was only time a customer got mad at me. Story 14. This was in the store, and while I was there, I didn't see it. A 13-ish girl comes in to get a slice. While I'm cooking that, a Latino guy who was waiting for his pizza reached up her skirt. The girl says nothing, but one of the drivers saw. He follows the guy outside and proceeds to kick his ass in the parking lot. The driver got fired from being a bouncer for being too aggressive, and then calls the cops. Another not-so-creepy story is we had a regular who would order the same thing every Tuesday, without fail. It was a 12 extra thin crust avalanche, 3x cheese pizza with artichoke and banana peppers. Every time it was a sopping mess of soft dough and cheese. But again, he ordered it every week for the 4 years I worked there. Another weird thing about this guy was that he was one of those baby fetishists. Like dress up in a diaper and schmidt himself and have his nurse clean up. So he'd answer the door in costume and either smelt like schmidt or baby powder, depending on where they were within the evening. They were always very polite and tipped really well. It was just weird. Story 15. One of my first deliveries as a driver was to this guy's house, who all the other drivers were laughing about when I was handed his order and the ticket. I get there and knock on the door, and I just hear a raspy, "Come in." I pretended I didn't hear it and knocked a few more times, but he just kept saying, "Come in." Finally open the door and I don't see him anywhere. So I just say, "Hello." He pushes the door at me, trying to close it. He was sitting at a desk that is hidden behind his door when it's open. It's a man, probably in his 50s, but looks much older due to smoking, which his house absolutely reeked of. He tells me to put the food on his desk instead of handing it to him. So I do. He then slides his payment, exact change, towards me. When I go to grab it, I notice his desk is a wooden desk with a glass pane over it. Between the wood and the glass, he has a bunch of pictures of Disney Channel girls, like Miley Cyrus, the girls from iCarly and the like. I tell him thanks and turn to leave when I see on his TV he's watching iCarly. I kind of froze and looked around and noticed a few pictures of him with teenage girls around his entertainment center. I left and went back to the store, and they asked me if he was watching Disney. I've never felt that creeped out by a person before. After that, he'd always request a female driver bring him his food. And reasonably so, they'd always send me mail instead. It was always Disney. He died about a year or two ago, and all I could think about was, I wonder what they did with all his creepy teenage girl stuff. Story 16. Our restaurant isn't known for making pizzas, but I digress. I go out with my employee trying to deliver this pizza, but we have no idea how to get to where this guy lives. We start traveling for literally hours trying to find this customer's house, and when we finally get there, he refuses to pay because we didn't get him the soda that he didn't even order. Anyway, my coworker got pissed and threw the pizza at his face. Duck your diet, Dr. Kelp. Story 17. Ooh, finally an upvoted question that specifically targets people like me. This request wasn't even from a customer, just an old lady I parked next to so I could get to the house. Her English was a little broken and basically asked me when the bus was coming. I apparently parked in a bus stop. The house I delivered to was on a main road. I just said IDK and told her I have to go deliver this pizza. I come back to my car and she stops me again and tells me her back aches. She's trying to get to her daughters. She's old enough to have daughters in their 30s or 40s, and asks me if I could drive her down the street to her daughter's house. I apologize and tell her I have to go. I have another delivery, which wasn't a lie. I had another order in my car waiting to be delivered. Said sorry again, and she looked at me in the eyes and said, "How could you?" And I got in my car and left. It was a very creepy thing, because she said it in a way like she was cursing me in an old witch's voice. Reminded me of the old lady in the movie Drag Me to Hell. I've also walked up to a nice house with a dead pigeon in front of the door, a fat white pigeon that decided to die 3 feet from the door. I gave the people their order, and afterwards, I stepped aside and asked if they knew there was a dead pigeon in front of their door. We all burst out laughing, and they just shut the door as I walk away, not even taking care of it, lol. No request, but somewhat awkward experience. Story 18. The most awkward one was a guy when I was 18 years old. It was late and he was in his 50s, I'd say, and very drunk. He ordered in advance and I got it, but when I got there, he invited me to step in so he could pay. He ends up snapping a photo of me and asking for one of the two of us. I was like, "Nah, I need the money. I have other orders waiting." He was persistent and tried to get me to stay and keep him company while he ate. I declined. I tried to leave and he grabbed my arm and said he forgot to tip me. Dude tipped me like $65 for a $15 pizza. I tried to say I couldn't take that, but he said I deserved it and he was getting uncomfortably close. I thanked him and bolted out the door. I thought I had gotten about 29 bucks or so because I saw the 20 on the outside and saw more. Once I left and counted it, I felt a little bad. But anyway, that's when I decided to enforce my new rule of not entering homes unless I know them or I feel safe with my environment. Story 19. Ex-tiny female pizza driver here. Holy Schmidt, were football days awesome for me. Well, it wasn't so much a request or anything, other than specifically requesting that I be the one that delivered his pizza. This one guy ordered from us a few times a week and always wanted me to deliver, and her knew how long it usually took to get there. So he decided to jump in the shower while he waited, getting all suds up. I pull up to the apt building and see him glance out the window. So I'm not thinking anything weird or anything, and I go and knock on the door. 75-year-old mother ducker answers the door with nothing on but the suds from his shower and an wide-open robe. I needed so much mind bleach from that. Here is another instance that wasn't as traumatic, but more just sad. There was a guy that ordered all the time, and he was always way drunk every time, to the point his nickname was the Drunk on Cox in seat. He was just super lonely and would beg for me to just stay and talk to him for 5 minutes. Turned out he lived by himself, didn't get out much, and didn't have much family. So I think I was the only one that would stay and talk to him and make him feel human. I did it just to be a decent human being, but he was so appreciative that I took time out for him. He would tip me like $30. Edit. A word, LOL. Story 20. Smoked a few joints with customers, had a few beers with some, had a shot of some Thai snake liquor once too. Delivering was awesome. I always remember these older peeps would order and request anchovies outside of the pizza bag to stay cold. They insisted I just walk in every time I'd deliver. They'd all be sitting around playing cards in the kitchen. Nice people. Story 21. A guy ordered. I was about to go to his address, which was the default, but noticed that it said to deliver it to a schmitty motel room, which was literally a minute drive from his house. Went there. He answered in his underwear with some girl laying on the bed. He picked up his jeans, pulled a big stack of money to pay me from. That one was pretty interesting, and not so much awkward or unusual, but there is a super rich neighborhood on the edge of my city, full of million-dollar houses. Those guys almost never tip, and if they do, it's only $1 or $2. The people living deep in the ghetto in 100-plus-year-old decrepit houses usually tip $5. Story 22. Worked for a small pizza restaurant. We had one customer who was on some sort of government assistance, so he had an account with us and would just order stuff throughout the month, then pay for it at the end of the month. He had some sort of mental health issues. So a couple days had gone by, and he hadn't paid. My boss was getting frustrated and told me to go to his apartment to see if he was there and collect the money. I didn't want to go by myself, so I said I'd only go if I could bring my friend with me. We just went and sat outside the apartment and smoked weed for 15 minutes before calling my boss and saying he wasn't there. Story 23. I live in a shore town and have to occasionally deliver to the beach. We are told to call the customer when we arrive so we can meet up with them on the beach. One day, I ran a beach delivery and I went to call the customer, but no one was picking up the phone. I called about 10 times and still no answer, so I decided to walk the beach with the food raised up, hoping someone would acknowledge me, claiming the food. After about 15 minutes, I finally found the customer and explained the whole scenario. And I didn't even get a tip. It was the most pathetic delivery I have ever ran. Still pisses me off to this day. It was nearly 100 degrees, and it was around 4th of July weekend. So I was extremely busy and could have spent that half hour running more deliveries, as opposed to walking the beach for some asshole who didn't even tip me. Story 24. Man, I drove for Domino's for like a year and a half, and never had any exciting stories. Just stories of non-tippers. Getting lost, and the fact that our delivery area was so damn large. I sometimes only ended up with a few deliveries in a shift if I got a lot of orders near the edge of our delivery area. That was a pain, since the people out there rarely tipped well. Strange areas with huge pit bulls chained up, no lights on the porches, rotting rusted cars as lawn decorations, and haggard people answering the door that looked like the after photo in anti-meth posters. Pretty pub UT. I only got a party of hot girls once, and despite some great smiles from the girls. No invitations for a massive orgy or meeting them later. What I would have given for some cheesy 70s Palm soundtrack to start playing really loud out of nowhere. Bo chicka bo wow. And one of the girls asking me if I liked hot pie, or if she could get extra sausage. Apparently being a pizza delivery guy is not as exciting as I was led to believe by watching Palm. Story 25. So this was last year, when I was 20. I drove up to the house, and an attractive young woman opens the door. I tell her the total, and she pays me. But before taking her pizza, she says with an accent, "Hold on, let me just come out of the garage," and closes the door. She then comes out of the garage and asks me, "Can you drive me back to my house?" At this point, I had so many questions come through my head. Who are you? Whose pizza is this? Whose house is this? But being the shy guy I am, I just asked if she was sure that's what she wanted, and before she even answered, she was in the passenger seat of my car. She then explained to me that she lives just down the street and she was moving from one house to the other. This was a very rich neighborhood. I guess rich people do shit like that. Story 26. Not so much a strange request, but a weird story. I once delivered a pizza to this lady's house. Upon arrival, I could hear what sounded like one person arguing with themselves in two different tones of voice. I knocked on the door and stood around for a while. She seemed oddly pleasant when she answered, then stated that she had to go get the money from her boyfriend. She closed the door, and after about 5 minutes I heard her yelling, "You really want to do this right now? You mother d***er." The door abruptly swung open, and she handed me a fistful of change. I told her that it wasn't enough to cover it. She again closed the door and went back inside. After another 5 minutes, she flings the door open and yelled, "Here, Ducker, you want some green?" Then threw a bunch of lettuce at me. Clearly she had some issues, so I let her keep the pizza and just left. After about 30 minutes of being back at the store, the lady calls and tells us we can come pick the pizza up because she doesn't have the money to pay for it. Definitely one of the more interesting nights of my experience delivering pizza. Story 27. Driver or order taker many moons ago. Best one was a guy who called and asked if we did pizza without sauce. Sure, no problem. Do we make them without cheese? Yeah, we can do that. Then he asked for a pizza with no sauce, no cheese, no toppings. Is there like a special name for that kind of pizza? Yes, sir. Bread. Story 28. I used to deliver to this lady, who we found out was a model. She must have been strung out from drugs of some sort because she could barely communicate. When is delivered to her, she was derelict looking, wore baggy clothes, and her hair was a rat's nest and sometimes smelled awful. I almost hurled one time. We looked up pictures of her at the pizza place before, and she was pretty all right. She lived in a fairly upscale apt in our downtown, so she must have had money still. Sometimes she'd take a while to answer the door, and she'd have all these random things blocking the door to open it. The other weird thing is that she never actually ordered pizza from, but lots of breadsticks, like 5 orders sometimes. She'd change it up like no mozzarella cheese or no park on them. One time, I just delivered 8 Cokes to her because it was about $20. She also tipped me $20 every time after I gave her my pen, and every time she'd thank me for it. Still. Story 29. Disclaimer. Not a delivery person. Recipient. Story time. My friend and my boyfriend and I used to order pizza every Wednesday. Usually it was carry out because we're broke college kids and it's cheaper than delivery. Well, one day, my boyfriend and I were lazy and didn't want to cook. We ordered a pizza. Waited and waited, and then all of a sudden we get a call from our friend saying, "The pizza guy wants to know what room you're in. You didn't put it in the order." We ended up finding the delivery guy, and the story goes like this. Because we order so frequently, the manager recognized our names and orders and knew my friend's phone by heart. Since my boyfriend didn't put the right info on the order, the manager called my friend to tell her to tell us that our pizza was ready. We had to reevaluate how much pizza we ate after that. Probably was super weird for the delivery guy. Edit a word. Story 30. I'm a little late to the party, but I delivered for a mom-and-pop pizza place for 3 years on and off. It was an awesome job, and most of the customers tipped great. I was delivering to an address that ordered often enough that I recognized it. It had a weird design where the living area was on the 2nd level, and the stairs came right down to the door. The guy there was middle-aged and definitely an alcoholic. He was always mumbling and smelled like hard liquor every time I delivered to him. This one night, though, he must have been really d***ed up. I rang the doorbell, and a few seconds after I heard this loud crash, I honestly thought he had just dropped something on his way to the door. But no, he had fallen down the stairs. It took around a minute for him to answer, I swear, and he just played it off like nothing was wrong. I almost burst out laughing at the time, even though it was kind of sad. Story 31. Not a weird request, but once at almost 11 p.m., I knock on this guy's door. He's taking a while, so I was just standing in the dark, and I noticed he had a ton of pets. 5 cats outside, a couple on top of his car. I could see some cats inside, and a lot of cages for birds or something. Then suddenly the door flies open, and this guy has what looks like a welding glove on, and he's holding something small and fuzzy in it. I assumed it was like a pet rat or something, but I couldn't figure out why he would have brought it with him to get his pizza. He half shouts, "You better move," and he runs down the stairs with his wife following him with her phone. A street light illuminates the two, and I realize this guy is running down his yard with the opossum. Apparently, it was on his ceiling and he had been chasing it around the house. I got a pretty good tip though. Story 32. I got a delivery once that had a note requesting I greet the customer by saying, "Hello," like Mrs. Doubtfire. I was a little high at the time, and it seemed pretty funny compared to the usual requests. I figured they'd get a kick out of it. Maybe I'd get a good tip. So I get to the house and this girl answers the door. I fully commit and scream, "Hello," with a pretty good Mrs. Doubtfire impression, if I do say so myself. The girl just stares at me blankly. Silence. Super awkward. Finally, she just says, "Okay." I tell her the total, and she tips me less than $1. It turns out it was an old note her roommate had put on a previous order using the same phone number. The girl I delivered to had never seen the movie and didn't get the reference. It's pretty funny looking back, but I still get douche chills sometimes remembering her confused expression and just, okay. I don't do any weird requests anymore. Story 33. Lady, young 40s-ish, wanted me to go inside her house so she could get her pen and kept insisting I come inside. She was wearing a robe with a cigarette in hand. I just gave her my pen, and she went on about trying to get me inside her house. She paid, put down the pizza, and I noped the duck out before anything else happened. Edit. Pen typo. Story 34. So there's this guy we deliver to occasionally. He lives in the apartments on the far edge of town, far away from any elementary schools or parks. I'd delivered to him a few times, and he usually answered the door in pants and once even in a shirt. But I had never taken a phone call from him until one day a few months ago. I answer the phone. He's out of breath. "Thank you for calling Pizza Place. Is this for pickup or delivery?" "Oh, I'll have it delivered." "Is this going to panting such and such street?" "Yeah." "Tell me about your specials." More heavy breathing. "Well, we've got the yada yada combo, which is X and Y for Sawa Z." "Oh yes, I'll have one of those." Eee! And that was the first time I've ever had phone kicks. Story 35. Kinda late here, but was on a delivery one time to this house in an affluent area where we don't get very many weird runs. At this house, I knocked on the door, and this woman answered the door and had probably 4 other people in the living room. In the middle of their living room was an elderly gentleman sitting in a recliner. After I gave the pizzas to the woman and she walked away, the old man started saying things like, "Help me, they don't feed me," and "Call the FBI or the police." I had just graduated high school and was probably very stoned at the time and was very freaked out. He kept saying things like that to me as all the other people in the room kinda laughed to themselves, trying not to let me see. It was by far the strangest delivery I ever took, left me wondering if I should have called the police. Story 36. I asked a pizza dude for a ride once with my friend while dressed in bubble wrap. It was some holiday in Ann Arbor, Michigan, long before Uber and Lyft, and the wait for a cab was an hour. So I saw this kid delivering a pizza and offered him $10 to drive us somewhere about 2 miles away. I was in 4-inch heels, not about to walk that Schmidt. He agreed, and during the ride, he proceeded to tell us how much he loved delivering pizzas. He said, "Everybody's excited to see me. I come to the door and people come running. I'm like Santa Claus." With pizza. It was nice to find a 16-year-old kid who found meaning in his job delivering pizzas, as I was a drunk 21-year-old dressed in bubble wrap, trying to figure out what I'd doing with the rest of my life. Still working on that second part. Story 37. This guy in Belmar. N&J didn't answer his door, and had HBO turned up so loud I could hear it in the apartment building's lobby. I went to a payphone, early 90s, and he eventually answered in a very gravelly voice, saying, "I'm sorry, it's my problem, not your problem." He said this multiple times. I finally got to his apartment, and he was wearing an open white terry cloth bathrobe, a white t-shirt, and nothing from the waist down. He paid me one $2 bill, 4 ones, a 50-cent piece, and 23.50 in quarters, which he counted out one at a time, reminding me to tell him to stop when he hit $30. Thereafter, he was known as Naked Man at Domino's Pizza. Sometimes he wore his wig, sometimes not. If a woman delivered his pizza, the penis was covered. If not, well, you know. Story 38. A guy said he only had $100 bills, but I only brought enough change to break a $50. He called the store and complained, and didn't leave a tip, and actually refused to pay for his food until I went all the way back to the store, got more change, which was against company policy to accept a $100 anyway, and came back. My boss said to just come back to the store and he'd take care of it. Story 39. Not too interesting for the rest of you, but extremely wild for me. I was delivering pizzas, and when I got to the house, I realized it was the second house I ever lived in as a child. The chick who ordered the pizza was the fiancé of the guy who used to rent to my parents. After I got back to the store for my next delivery, it was to the third house I ever lived in. And one time, I delivered to this house and touched the lady's boobs by accident, and she looked at me, as if she wanted to see if I'd do more. I avoided eye contact and pretended like it didn't happen since it was an accidental brush. Also, she was older and out of shape. Story 40. One time I had to deliver pizza to a youth center in the middle of nowhere. I was expecting it to be a nice little camp for kids, but it turned out to be a juvenile detention center with maximum security fences and checkpoints. I was scared schmittless because it was 10 at night and the whole place looked creepy. I had to buzz in several different gates and had to slide the pizza and the receipt under bulletproof glass in a waiting area. The guard who ordered the pizza had a wall of shackles behind her, and she saw me eyeing them and said, "If you messed up my order, you can try them out." I had her sign the receipt, and I got out of there as fast as possible. Story 41. Kind of on topic. Not a pizza boy or anything, but one day I walked into a favorite pizza place of mine and asked if I could just buy a throwaway bottle of Dr. Pepper since I was walking to work. The manager handed me the pop and said, "It's on the house." Next week, I ordered a pizza and tipped the delivery guy $50. Dude looked like he won the lottery. Tell the boss I said thanks for the soda. One good turn deserves another, and the dudes there would drive through a blizzard to get pizzas out, so he probably deserved it anyway. Story 42. I used to work for Papa John's, and on the notes for the receipt of the delivery it said, "Call me Kexy as hell." The woman specifically asked for me, which was even creepier. My manager, of course, noticed this and told me to do it anyways. I get to the door, and I schmit you. Not. It was a 300 lb lady, maybe 30-40 years old, in skimpy black underwear. I had to hold back the vomit and handed her the pizza. She then asked me, "Aren't you going to call me Kexy?" I then proceeded to nope the dick out of there and ran away fast as I could, back to my car, not even caring about the tip. I had a lot of crazy moments for some reason while working there. Story 43. I couldn't find the house, so I called the customer to ask, and a young girl answered the phone. I asked for directions to their house, and she told me she didn't order a pizza and hung up. Her dad called 5 minutes later on, "Who is this? And why are you calling my house?" Me. "I'm with Domino's. You ordered a pizza." Dad. "I didn't order any damn pizza." "Who is this really, and why are you trying to find my house?" Me. "This is Domino's. I have a pizza that was ordered to your house." Dad. "Bullshit. I have caller ID, and it does not say Domino's." Me. "Domino's does not supply us with company cell phones, sir." Ended up just taking the pizza back to the store. Story 44. Few years ago, I made a delivery to the Motel 6 in town. It was a Hispanic guy, didn't speak any English. The order was paid for with a card, so I give the guy his receipt. He signs, then hands me a $20. Quite surprised, I said thanks, and was on my way. A little bit later, the dude's wife calls the store and is screaming in the manager's ear that I stole $20 from her husband when it was already paid for. In reality, she didn't tell him it was paid for. and he thought he was paying for the pizza. They made me go back and give them the money back like I'm some sort of thief. Some customers are scumbags. Story 45. I just remembered another one that was pretty awkward. I had just dropped off a hibachi sushi order at one of the nicer neighborhoods in the city. As I was sitting in my car, I got a knock on my window. It was the lady I just delivered to. I roll down the window and she says, "I forgot to say I wanted an extra sauce on the side. Could you go get one for me?" I told her, "Sorry, I couldn't. I had other deliveries," and she responded, "It's not that far." Again I said sorry, and she scoffed and stormed back up to her house, pissed that I wouldn't abandon my other deliveries to get her sauce. She forgot to order. Story 46. We got an online order that had the special request, "Send your cutest delivery boy." That happened to be me, not because I was cutest, the random chance of who was up for delivery at that time. And two late 20s, early 30s chicks opened the door, one with her kid in her arms. They didn't tip me. Story 47. Online order came through. On the notes, the customer asked, "What does the fox say?" I had just seen the video a few days earlier, so I was familiar with it. Pulled up and rang the doorbell, gave them their pizza, and they sat there expecting to hear it. I did the song, and they all cried out in joy and had the biggest smiles on their faces. Got a nice tip off of it too. Story 48. Asked me to come inside. Usually if they look nice enough or I know them well enough. Delivered pizzas there multiple times. I find it okay to walk a little inside and place the pizza on the table and have them give me money, and I just leave. One night I delivered to this random lady I've never delivered to before, and she asked me to come in. I looked index and saw handcuffs, lotion, rope, and a wrench on her kitchen counter. I said, I can't. It's against my works policy," and then proceeded to give her the pizza, grabbed the cash, and got the hell out of there. Story 49. I once rocked up to a house in something like March, and as I rang the doorbell, a guy burst out dressed in full Nazi soldier dress and screamed, "Sig Heil!" at me while doing a salute and staring through me with an absolutely adamant stare. Guy literally stood there for a good 30 seconds before his flustered wife tiptoed around his position to come pay for and take the food. Weird part about it was a few seconds after that when his son of around 2 years, with perfect blue eyes and curled blonde hair, joined them. Not really sure what the guy thinking. Story 50. Montgomery, Alabama, in the late 1980s. Delivered a pizza to a motel. Guy took 3 minutes or more to answer the door, and when he did, he said his money was down in his van in the parking lot. Motions towards the van, down at ground level, panel van with no windows. Wants me to come down to the van with him. I told him, "Nope, I'll wait here." He gets all pissy. Insists that I go down to his van with him. I refuse. He goes back inside for a moment, and I hightail it back to the restaurant. Story 51. I've been asked out a couple times. Once had a fairly old lady ask me to set her food down inside, then block my way out and try and kiss me. I get smoked out a fair bit, and a surprising amount of people want me to drink. Overall, it's way less interesting a driving job than taxi, limo in my experience. Schmidt gets real with driving cabs. From that, I've got the saddest sad stories. Funny, crazy people, drugs and celebrities and hookers and gangsters. Yeah. Way more intimate job. I actually kinda like that pizza delivery is so much less personal. Story 52. Kinda sad. I used to deliver for a local place that would deliver other items to regular customers that he knew well. Pack of smokes, scratch tickets, basically anything available at the liquor store next door. One guy would call up every day, and I mean every single day, and order a small ham or turkey sub and a bottle of vodka every d***ing day. Part of me knows I helped that guy drink himself to death. I don't know his fate, but I'm making an educated guess. Story 53. Used to deliver pizza. Had a regular customer who would phone in a delivery order, then wait in the car park and ask every delivery worker if they had his pizza and request a ride home. The cost of a delivered pizza was about half the cost of a taxi. I drove him home every couple of weeks for a year or so. Story 54. I was delivering pizza at night when I was younger and couldn't find the house. So I called the guy and asked where he was. Turns out I was right outside his place and headed to the door. He answered the door butt-ass naked, stood with the door open long enough to get a look, and then acted all surprised that I was there. I just freaking called you. He shut the door and put on shiny purple spandex shorts. Seriously, get your kicks somewhere else. Story 55. We had a guy we called the Iceman. He was a disabled hermit who lived by a lake. He would request that the driver stop at a gas station and get a cup of ice. He would also sometimes have the driver deliver his pizza, and he'd have you drop a check off at the bank with a bank slip for $5 back. That was your tip. Not really weird, but kind of a pain in the ass. Story 56. Delivered to Bobby Cox a bunch of times. He was a really nice guy. Tipped me about $30 a few days before Christmas. Always $10 other times. Missy Elliott came into the store a few times. Driving her Ferrari, one of the drivers tried to discreetly snap her picture and forgot the flash was still on. She flipped the duck out and tried to have him fired. Other than that, just a bunch of kids asking for dumb things. The fad seemed to be draw something on the box. Story 57. Not all that weird, but when I was in high school, I got a large order, about 10 pizzas around 9 p.m. Nothing out of the ordinary, usually a party of some sort. Pull up to the house and sure enough, a whole bunch of cars in the driveway. When I went to the door though, my gym teacher answered the door, with an orgy going on behind him. I've never seen someone turn pale so quick. He ended up tipping me $80 and begged me to keep it quiet. Story 58. I was a driver for a couple months a few years back. The only request I can remember was a guy inside the pizza shop asking for a ride home since he just overheard a delivery come in over the phone. He claimed to live near the location. The owner wasn't in since it was past midnight. Plus I was bored, so I decided to give him a lift. Dude was pretty cool, even smoked me in on a joint. Story 59. I delivered to this guy and he asked if I wanted my tip in coke weed or cash. I told him I could buy the other two with cash. So that's what I took. About a week later, I delivered to him again, and he gave me $25 to go get a blunt wrap for him from the liquor store that was 2 blocks away. I feel he was a trust fund baby degenerate, but he paid well. Story 60. It is the toss-up between the time I had someone order 3 pizzas to be delivered to the local park playground at 10 p.m. Turns out to be a group of stoned dudes just chilling at the top of a slide and wanted pizza. Then, we had someone order 52 milkshakes for delivery in the middle of summer. We weren't sure if it was a spoof order or real, so we made them pay up front. It was a real order. Story 61. Was a delivery driver at the time. Delivered a pie to an apartment. Guy answers and he is naked. He is holding a Bible flat in one hand and it has stacks of change on it. He says, "Come in and put the pizza down." I politely decline and put the pizza down on the ground, averting my eyes. This pissed him off. He took the change on the Bible and threw it on the ground and slammed the door. Story 62. This one delivery had "Send your hottest delivery guy" as an instruction for the delivery guy. Me not really paying attention to it, I just deliver the pizza. I get to the front door, ring the bell, and I hear this girl yell all excited, "I'll be right there." She opens the door and her expression goes from D to, I think you can all guess what happened next. Winking smiley, but also a tear. Story 63. An incredibly fat man invites me into his home and always asks me to do small things for him. And when I say fat, I mean the fattest man I've ever seen. He remains in his chair the whole time, and I wouldn't be surprised if he barely moves throughout the entire day. Grab the TV remote and pass it to him. Open his soda, adjust the air conditioning. Story 64. I don't remember any truly outrageous requests from when I was delivering pizza back in college, but one time, a customer requested a side of nacho cheese along with the pizza. Little did I know, the nacho cheese and the butterscotch pudding were kept side by side and unlabeled in the fridge. They never called and complained, but I definitely gave them microwaved butterscotch pudding. Story 65. One customer requested we draw a meme on the box. It read as follows. I don't always draw memes, but when I do, it's on pizza boxes. My artistic talent went about as far as writing a sentence. Guy tipped at least. Edit. And I still wonder which one of you beautiful bastards it was who asked. Story 66. Probably when some girl pulled the classic Pomno move and ordered a pizza with extra sausage from the delivery driver. I was the driver who took the delivery, and she was pretty attractive. But when she invited me in, I said no, because I had a girlfriend at the time, so I had to pass on what could have been.